ready, been ready.
All right.
At all the receptions, my heart just sank. It just sank. And I kept thinking back of 68 when I first got there. Quite a difference, quite a difference. I was drafted in 1944. All black units, all of them were studs. They had no jobs for them out there fighting. What they do, they give them the grunt jobs. So I did get transferred to a supply ship. So when we wasn't delivering supplies to the ships, we would go on the beachhead. So I ended up going ashore at Iwo Jima. With the supplies, you had to take them up on the front line. So you may as well be up on the front line with the Marines, because you was more of a target than the Marines were. So here I am trying to stay out of the Marines and right with them all the time. And we bringing casuals back, taking them to the hospital ship. That was one of the most patriotic wars that we participated in. All of the wars, you have some volunteers. Nothing like World War II. I can remember this because I saw it myself. Guys standing in line out there Pearl Harbor for blocks and blocks signing up. I was discharged in 46, back into college. I just came to the conclusion school was out. I went down to the recruiting office. I had tried to get in when the Tuskegee Airmen, I was too young. Volunteered for the Marines, and I got shipped to Quantico as a steward. Very unhappy young man. I had to request mass. My officer in charge, you request mass when I tell you to go request mass. We had an individual that was very Southerner, and I wasn't going to get nowhere there. Battalion commander came through. We was standing there for inspection. He stopped and said, "How things going, Marine?" I said, "Sir, it's not going too well." He said, "What's wrong?" I said, "I want to get out of this steward branch and come over into the Marine Corps." And about the time I got back to my barracks, Colonel Shooks went to see you. He said, "You got my attention." Some Marines was backing me when I was a first lieutenant. He said, "Do you know what happened to me?" I said, "Yes, sir, I do." He said, "What was that?" "You won the Medal of Honor. You go back to your barracks and pack your bags. You're out of the steward branch as of now." It was one of the moving things for my career, because what Colonel Shooks did, led me through my 27 years.
So I joined the Naval Reserves in 1952. I didn't actually get to Korea until after the war, and we were there on the cleanup detail. You're just off the shore and you're there to show power.
I was a radio operator, convoy leader. The trucks are loaded with supplies and troops. Well, what is the enemy's gonna do? They zero in on those. There's 2 jeeps. Convoy commander, and the next jeep is your radio operator. It's more or less like you're marked. So, this is the radio. They had a huge antenna on, you couldn't miss it. and that's the one that I was in. When we go up, we had to bring troops back down. That's the glory ride. Because they don't want those guys. They want to get the ones that's coming up.
Well, at 3 years old, I lost my dad. And so when I was 6, so the state of Maine took us, so I was raised as a foster child and went to 3 different ones. When I was 17, they decided that couldn't keep us anymore and I had to find a different place in town to live. So went door to door asking people, to take me in to go to school. Couldn't find anybody. Well, I joined the Air Force. We got to Holloman. They wanted people to transfer to Kirtland. We all had to have secret clearance, which I had secret clearance from Holloman. We were going on this hydrogen bomb test out in the middle of the Pacific. And they were so secret, they kept us isolated from everybody else at Kwajalein. And on the Marshall Islands, it's just a chain of islands. And they dropped in one of the islands and it sank. That's how powerful it was. Between the atomic bomb and the hydrogen bomb, the description they told us was you take an office desk, one of those little yellow ashtrays, that everybody had. Well, you hit that ashtray and that was the atomic bomb. Said, well, you take that ashtray out and do away with the whole desk, that was the hydrogen bomb. And after it was over with, everybody's going to be going home by Christmas, but 10% had to stay to mop up. And guess who was one of the 10%? Well, we had it all ready to ship to Korea, and that's when the Korean War ended.
Every 18 months or so, it's like tonic for the soul. To sit and have a beer somewhere with all the boys that were over there. Nobody's wearing army greens. We're all 22nd Infantry. We're the names not etched up on that wall. We all gave some, but some gave all. We're still fighting the battles, even though there ain't no rifles in our hands. Those memories are bright as a candle, like those tracers in a place called Vietnam. Nobody cares about that war. That's what I've got my brothers for, to help me to remember and forget all the stories, all the scars, how we soldier just as hard, how the blood we shed was just as red, just as red.
I was on an aircraft carrier, and on January the 2nd, we got pulled out all of a sudden, and we later found out we were in the Gulf of Tonkin. We did extract casualties from Laos, Special Forces, and CIA. They were in there teaching the Laotian people how to use weapons. The Navy said that I served during peacetime because it hadn't been declared. And I said, well, why were we there then? And he says, you weren't there. You weren't supposed to be, so you weren't there. They finally opened it up. Yes, they acknowledged that we did have troops on the ground there. My main job was a clerk, but I was also a firefighter. One time we had an airplane hit the rear end of the ship. We had fire everywhere. Injured my back, but I was 19. I just got up and kept on going. Hong Kong was known for custom made. A buddy of mine came back one day with a silk shirt, and I asked him to borrow it so I could get one done. So I went to this tailor and I told him I want 5 of these shirts exactly like this one. When I went to pick it up, I noticed there was a cigarette burn on the pocket. Then I looked at the other ones; they all had the cigarette burn. And I asked him, I says, why is this? And he brought the sample that I took. He says, well, look. He showed me that it had a cigarette burn. I hadn't noticed. So what they did, they put a cigarette burn in all the shirts.
We know who's going to be the first ones to go. Out at sea, you the only ship. Tonight, next morning you wake up and there's ships all around you. You know, this is it. They started making the assault. We being the communication company, as soon as the infantry makes the landing and move forward, we're next to go in. And my job was the telephones. And all of a sudden they'll say, well, they're getting ready to set up the headquarters. I know how we can get military-type digital telephone system. What I'm saying, you don't have to sit there and wind up this phone to get power. The good Lord's looking after me. I spent 3 wars, and I don't own a Purple Heart. That's one medal you don't want.
I entered the Air Force at 17. I had just come back from England, and my wife and I went to Mountain Home, Idaho. 1 year to the day that I signed into Mountain Home, they called me up and said, "You got orders." I went home and told my wife I was going to Vietnam, because that was 69. And so when I went to the briefing, they said, "You're going to Osan." And I said, "Where's that?" And they told me it was in Korea. My job was in transportation. I was in vehicle maintenance. And one of the things that I had to tell the people in vehicle maintenance was, because they're saying, well, you know, our job's not important. But if you ever stop and think about it, nobody walks anywhere. They want to ride it in a truck, put their toolbox, and drive out to that airplane to work on it. So we have a very important job.
We actually went up to Da Nang and were up there with the hospital ship as a protector. It was heartbreaking to see. Those helos were just one after the other. They would go out and come back, and they were bringing in wounded, you know. So yeah, it was a sad time. I was on a ship, one of the ships that went up to rescue Pueblo. We went up there with the idea that if you don't give up our crew and our ship, there's going to be some action, yeah. But in Vietnam, they didn't care. They would come after a ship, you know. They would shoot at the ship with rifles, and that's crazy.
They sent me to Germany in bomb holder. They sent us to Berlin. You know, we were right across the street from the wall, and we could see the enemy on the other side and turn their tank turrets towards us, kind of trying to intimidate us, you know. And we would do the same thing, but nothing happened. We shot water at each other once in a while. In Little Rock, Arkansas, this was about the segregation thing. Black people couldn't go to school. White schools, and they had us going to schools to protect the black kids. We were escorting people inside the schools, and we'd help them out when they came out. I never thought that I would be doing that.
They were using people up at a rapid rate. Well, all of a sudden they started running out of first-timers, and they started drafting non-college people, and then they started drafting people out of college who didn't have a certain grade level. I joined the Air Force with a class date in April. I finished my coursework in college, so I had 3.5 months to wait to go in. My new wife, checked the mail every day, and I got reclassified. And I didn't know it because she threw it away. She said, "Oh, he's got a class date. We don't need this anymore." So I went from 2S to 1A, and I didn't know it. Till I got a telegram, went over and talked to the draft board, and they said, "If you're not in the military on 1st of April, you're ours. And we trump everything." So I had to go in early. I was at Tan Son Nhut, Saigon. The peace agreement was the North Vietnamese would release POWs if we would withdraw ground troops. And I was part of that ground troop withdrawal. I was involved with the repatriation of POWs after the war. And these two guys both got shot down within the first week or 2 weeks that they were there. And so then they were in Hanoi Hilton for 7 years. Then they come back out. They don't know how to fly anymore. And boy, did they have baggage. So you have to work with them in flying. You also have to work with them in coming back to normal civil life. And sometimes you'd have to cancel a flight because we needed to get through this part before we try to get through that part. Some of them were very successful in their reacclimation, some weren't. And some of them, carried that to the grave. I don't know any of them who took their own lives, but I know some of them that were not happy. They were never happy.
I was at Benoit Air Base, and at the time that I was there, it was the world's busiest airport. We had a takeoff or landing every 47 seconds, round the clock. My main job was crew chief on F-100 aircraft, single-engine jet fighter. One day I was doing an end-of-runway check, and I was watching, and this one came over and was just coming in for the approach, dropped his landing gear, and didn't realize it, but he'd been shot up pretty bad, and his wing came off, and he just started doing a spin. Luckily, the pilot bailed out. A couple of people on the ground got killed when the plane hit, and I did a dive under the line truck because it was coming down on me too. The first aircraft ever that could go Mach 1 in level flight on the F-100, single-engine jet fighter. In Vietnam, the aircraft was assigned to the crew chief, and the pilots just kind of rotated around, with one exception, and that was the squadron commander. And the squadron commander's name was Colonel John Comstock. After his 40th mission, he was ready to rotate home. He always did the same thing, took off his birds, gave them to me, and he said, "I'll pick them up later." And this time he gave them to me. He said, "No, go down to Saigon, go out on the Cho Lan Bridge." Now, Cho Lan Bridge was a huge bridge across the Mekong River. He said, "Be there 1 o'clock." So I see this speck up in the skies coming down fast. And that was Colonel Comstock in my bird, and he went under the Cho Lan Bridge. So close to the water, he was throwing up a ducktail like a hydroplane. And all I could think of was, shit, I'm going to have to clean that.
I was a BT-3 boilerman. It was a very, very hard and nasty place to work. At one point, I took a thermometer down there, and we were reading like 130, 135 degrees Fahrenheit. We didn't see too many chubby BTs on the ship. There was one incident, and I think it was in 1969. They sent us up to Korea when there was a spy plane shot over North Korea, talking about how hot the boiler room was. It was so cold that we had to wear jackets down in the boiler room.
I joined the Army. I went over to Germany, I went over to Italy. I got out of the Army for about 18 months. So the recruiter said, "Scalva, you got prior service, we need officers." So I went down to OCS. After dropping out of OCS, my penance was to go to Vietnam. I'm a 23-year-old radio operator in an infantry company. And then I lived through that 13 months over there. I come back, and lo and behold, one of the presidents, he was short-handed, so he sent me back in 1970. We were bringing a new improved Hawk Battalion over to Vietnam. We got out there in the morning. The guy comes over here and says, "I got good news and bad news. The good news is your equipment is Schofield Barracks, Hawaii, and it's not coming. go find a job. So I went down to the commo shop, talked to the warrant officer. He was building Army Mars radio stations so the troops could get phone calls home. Honey, over. Can you hear me, honey? Over. I built 5 of them all over Vietnam, my second tour.
Our company was assigned details for dignitaries that came to the Bay Area. I was on a detail with the King and Queen of Nepal. The second one was we got to go into the presidential suite. The bed was 7 feet long. It was President Charles de Gaulle of France. The third one we were in the lobby of the Mark Hopkins Hotel. This little short, bald-headed guy, Nikita Khrushchev. That is my stories.
We got there at 4 in the afternoon. They had incoming when we landed. One of those guys that came off the plane got hit. I had a 5-ton truck that was traveled down to Saigon and went to the harbor and picked up all the supplies and went to Ton Snoot and got on Caribou and flew it down and I'd hitchhike back. What kind of got me really is they had all these Vietnamese working on base and you take a break and they'd be walking this way, you know. And you kind of wonder what was going on. That night they shelled us. So they knew exactly where to go, I guess. That's what I couldn't figure out. Why were they on base working with us, you know?
I was in Thailand in 1965 and we stayed extremely busy. We were flying combat flights 3 a day, 7 days a week. I was a jet aircraft mechanic working on F-105s and I was on they call it repair and recovery. Slang for it was the crash crew. A lot of the airplanes had damage in their windshields. We could get windshields, but we couldn't get the gaskets. And we went down to the motor pool and got some truck inner tubes. And we made our own gaskets to put the windshields back in. Where I was at, the Armed Forces radio network was blocked out. We had no information. We didn't know what day of the week it was. When they picked us up in the middle of the night, they flew us to Japan. And there was colored lights all over the place and decoration. I asked the bus driver, I said, what's all the big celebration? He said, it's Christmas. We didn't know it was Christmas. I was working at base flight. One day my sergeant come out and got me, he says, I'm taking you off your airplane. Well, I hadn't done anything wrong. Anyway, a few days later, an old hunk of junk showed up. He says, I want you to take that airplane and start polishing on it. He says, you need to change the tires. I said, Sergeant, the tires are good. He said, change them. So he said, do a brake job. I said, the brake's good. Change them. So I made everything new. And one day a pilot shows up and I asked, where are you going? He said, this airplane is going on static display in Truth or Consequences, New Mexico. At that time of my life, I didn't know there was such a place as New Mexico. A little over 50 years later, there is an airplane at the airport. And it's at mile marker 85 on Interstate 25. There was no fanfare like what's happening on this trip. It's affected me heavily what's happening right now. It's great. Thank y'all so much.
I got out of boot camp, and then from there I went to admin school. I was a casualty reporter. I had to go to the post office, and I had to go through the people's mail and stuff, open their envelopes. In those wallets and stuff, I saw pictures of their moms, their dads, and their kids, and it was terrible, right? First sergeant told me, Prado, we're going to graves registration. We had to go and identify the bodies. Vietnam was so hot, it was about 125 degrees. So what I did, I opened the door and I laid on top of the bags. The first sergeant comes out, opens the door, says, Prado, what are you doing laying down there? I said, Top, it's really hot. He says, yeah. He says, but you're laying on top of bodies. Oh, I got up and I walked outside. The guy I was supposed to replace as an office pope, and he came back after 30-day leave. And the lieutenant says, Prado, go to supply, get your gear, and we're gonna call you back in about a month. I came back in 11 months later. During those 11 months, I was a machine gunner and I was a rifleman. I came back, I became an alcoholic. I would drink to try to forget about everything. Finally, I had to go to therapy, admit to them that I was an alcoholic. Took me a long time, but I did it. 59, 60 years that I have not drank any alcohol.
1960, they put me on an amphibious assault transport. The ship was commissioned in 1944, and every time we would go to sea, we would have gunnery practice. The Navy would send out an airplane with a sleeve behind it. or they'd send a tug out with a sled they'd pull behind it. We shot at that. And the gunnery officer was supposed to give the command, commence firing. So we were all waiting, and the order came across the phones, release projectiles. Nobody knew what the hell that meant. One battery started firing over here, and another battery was firing over there.
I went to the NAM and the plane kept circling. Our pilot says the airfield, it has just been mortared, and they're putting up the fires. And he said, welcome to Vietnam. And we were shipped off to the Central Highlands. We only did a soft jumps out of a helicopter, because the chopper wouldn't land, and you jump off. It's not the jumping, Lane, it's the landing.
Yeah.
It's the landing, Tet Offensive hit us. We had overran a couple of times. One of our sergeants got decapitated. A lot of guys died. Some of the guys would get a Dear John letter. They'd go off out of our perimeter, and we would find them with a needle stuck in their arm. They OD'd because they couldn't take it. And these guys I saw every day, every night, every minute, every second for 15 months. It was just difficult to leave them behind. And then there's always that, why not me? Everybody gets killed. Man, I was right here, why not me?
We feel guilty for the ones we've lost. Coming back alive has had its cost. Everybody's got their cross to bear. Be it here, be it there. It's still around us everywhere. We're still fighting the battles, even though there ain't no rifles in our hands.
I was on an aircraft carrier, USS Hancock, 1969. My sleeping quarters were in the fantail, 3 decks down. And F-8 Crusader crashed about 2 in the morning, broke in half. Fuel, fire, smoke, you name it, just shot down like a wind tunnel. There were no lights, even the red lights that they had. Nothing. It was just dark, smoke everywhere. And we finally got out. About 8 years ago, I met a young lady. She did documentaries. She invited me to be one of the question and answer speakers at the Santa Fe Film Festival. I told my story. After I finished, the guy lifted his hand up and he said, I just wanted to let you know that I was the one that saved your life. And I looked at him. And he said, well, when that plane crashed, he was on the destroyer escort. They were the ones that would come up whenever there were crashes like that, and they would put the fires out. And he was the one that put that fire out and got us up out of there. And I'm sitting here looking at this guy, 50 years later. I was running the other way, and I wound up down at the bottom of the ladder, broken back and shattered pelvis, and spent the next year in and out of hospitals. They released me from the Navy with 10% disability. I couldn't walk, I couldn't bend over, but they gave me 10%, gave me a whole $41 a month. I picked up many a overboard pilot, guys that were blown off the aircraft carrier from the jet blast, and some of them we couldn't find. And it was, yesterday was one of the most emotional days I've ever had in my life. My friend was killed in Vietnam. I had been to Washington, D.C. about 25 years ago, but yesterday was different. I think it's because I now understand what and why this all happened. And this lady came over into the name, and you get it out on the piece of paper, and she goes on her little phone, and she goes, that's him, right? Yeah. And she goes, look here. She tells all about him, how he died. I hadn't seen that picture in 50 years. It definitely has changed my life. There's no question about it. This has been a life-changing experience.
The first assignment was a destroyer, and we were going to be home ported in Japan. Every 3 months we would go to off the shore to support the troops. I had a chief that was going to send me back to the States to storekeeper school. Well, surprise, surprise, the Navy decided that they needed me in Vietnam. And I spent another year over there. I led a team, and we would offload ships. The worst part about it was we also did the Agent Oranges, the pesticides, herbicides, and all that. I got there and to offensive. That's the worst that he got in Da Nang and in Saigon. It was hard. I lost a lot of friends. I wanted to thank the honor for taking me to Washington. I had a dream that I would someday go to the wall and the honor fight. Granted, my dream was fulfilled. That was one of the top things I had on my bucket list. I touched that wall. It brought back so many memories of the guys that we lost.
I got a letter from the draft board, second notice. I went to my mom's house, and so she finally fessed up. She said, I got this about a month and a half ago, but I hid it, hoping it would go away. She knew what was happening, you know. I got a job as a battalion radio net operator, which means that I had control over 5 companies in that battalion. So I had the ultimate power when I was on duty to control all the commo. And it was a complex job because you couldn't call a truck. You had to call it something in code. Well, I was pretty successful at it. Plus, it affected a helicopter full of like a general, 2 colonels, 1 major, and 1 command sergeant major. And I took them from takeoff to landing. And there was a way of doing it. The destination, hey, to throw a smoke bomb out there, but don't identify the color of it. Smoke has been thrown. Can you tell me what color it is? And he said, I see a blue. So I said, okay, knock it off. So I called this guy back and said, was your smoke blue? He said, sure was. So I cut off him when I said, okay, that's your spot, put her down. I found out how important that job was because of the volume of work we had to do. There was a practice in Vietnam that the order was given, fire right now, instantaneously, so everybody can get their rifle. They shoot like crazy into the dark. And it was called a wild minute. And a wild minute was recon by fire. If you couldn't see the enemy, but he was there. We had one of those wild minutes when the first night. And then later on that night, all hell broke loose. And I said, oh, shoot, I'm gonna die. And so I turned instantaneously to the opening to that bunker. I ran through the bunker and I dove in there head first because the opening was only like 2.5 feet. And who do I meet but that damn captain in front of me? And I buried my head into his stomach area and I gave him a 5 or 6 foot ride into the opposite wall. And he cussed me out. Sir, they're attacking us. They're not attacking us, you fool. There was a plane called Puff the Magic Dragon. Out of every window on one side, there was those high velocity machine guns, millions of rounds in a given territory, and it was clean. Several years after I came back from Vietnam, I found myself in Washington, D.C., and I went to the wall. My buddies are listed on there, 7 of them, 7 close friends. And I just yelled out and I ran. I ran out of that place as fast as I could. So I said, I'm never going back to that place. And I told my guardian, Elaine, I got this problem. I don't think I can go through the wall. But she encouraged me to continue. Started going down the hill towards the wall there. It was very uneasy. I stayed on the outer edges away from the wall as much as I could. I made it all the way out, and I was by myself. Arnie was walking behind me. He said, Mr. Enriquez, they're going to have a photo op. I can't let my guys down. There's going to be a gap in the picture if I don't go down there. So I worked my way there, and he was following, accompanying me. And I made it down there because then I saw my roommate and then my guardian, and they were looking at me and like, come on. And so I joined them, and I struggled through the photo op, but every second that went by, I felt better. I said, hey, I made it, huh? She said, yeah, you sure did.
I was on a destroyer, and we escorted the carriers. Carriers were always launching planes, and we did it day and night, day and night. It was just continuous. I worked down in the engine room, general quarters all the time, getting ready to go to battle. And when I was over there, they needed people to help the Brownwater Navy. So they said, there's a slot open, do you want to go? And like a fool, I said, yeah, I want to go. In the Mekong River, those patrol boats, their main job is to search them. And if they had any guns or anything, we took them. But it got hairy after a while because we did patrols at night also. And those Viet Cong people, they've got the weapons. And we used to go into these narrow canals, 50, 60 foot wide canals. And those boats are only 30 feet wide. You can't turn. if you're in there and they start shooting at you, the only thing you can do is take off and hope for the best. And at night, you don't turn lights on or nothing because you're a sitting duck. I did it for 7 months and I hated it. And I was glad to get off of that duty.
Most of the real action I was in is when we moved farther north and we got up in LZ Leslie and Camp Evans. One of the things that happened on LZ Leslie, we flew in and the Marines were collecting themselves together to go to this other hill, and it was just a valley in between us. So we're sitting there relaxing and watching the Marines go single file. And they went over to that other hill, and pretty soon the fighting started. After 3 days, finally the Marines were able to raise their flag, and the very next morning the Marines left. Nobody wanted the hill. I didn't quite understand that function. They take a hill that nobody wants. So the helicopter came in with our mail and everything, and the helicopter landed on the landing zone. The Marines had cleared for it, and they were using it, and then we got it after them. And the helicopter landed, and it wasn't but 2 or 3 seconds, and a mortar hit the helicopter and killed everybody on the helicopter, and exploded, blew the mail all over the area and so forth. When the Marines were there, Vietnamese had pinpointed that landing zone, and they'd knocked out more than one helicopter there already. We didn't know anything about that, so when we came in there, called our helicopter in, we found out real quick. I was a tunnel rat, 115 pounds, sure I was, because I'm claustrophobic. So crawling into small tunnels, now not all tunnels are small, we had to get a rope because I tied it around my ankle. And I said, anything happens in there, start pulling on that rope. And they never had to pull me out, but this happened at Camp Evans, and we got overrun. We went down the hill a little ways. I gathered my people together within a minute or so, and then we reassaulted my bunker. My bunker had a 50 caliber machine gun. Shoot the bullet about that big. They finally got that 50 cal going, and I got shot right across here. And if it had gone a quarter of an inch this way, it would have taken half my head off. But we got our machine gun back, took it over again, but yeah, it was pretty spooky. And this is in the Battle of WWII. We were getting helicopter assist, the medevacs coming in the middle of the night, and they also had the gunships out there, the Hueys with the ARA. They'd bring in whatever they could because we were getting shot up pretty bad. We really took it bad. We landed in there, and a guy that I knew, and I looked up his name on the wall when we were there, and he stuck his head up, and he had a steel helmet on, but right above, about 3 inches above the lip, there's a hole in it, and it was a fragmentation thing. It wasn't a bullet. He was totally unconscious, but we were loading him on the helicopter, and the guys that were loading him on actually dropped him on his head, and he of course, died. The battle was over. We had won the battle. Not very many people in my platoon, I think only 7 of us in my platoon actually walked out of there.
We were actually a blocking force between the Cambodian border and Saigon. We did not fight the Viet Cong to a great extent. We fought NVA, and their job try and invade Saigon, because what they would do is they would come down the Ho Chi Minh Trail. They would logger in the Hobo and Boi Loi woods, which were on the Saigon River, just real thick, almost jungle. We would go out on our normal missions, but if somebody got in trouble, our job was to go help them out. So we might fly 3, 4 mobile missions a day. We were at a fire-based Pershing. LRPs would get into problems. That's how I spent my Thanksgiving, was trying to get a LRP team out of trouble. We could set at night, and then we could watch the flashes, and we'd say, okay, that's where we'll be tomorrow. Because then they would fly us out, and we would patrol that area where they had done the airstrike, and it would be like a 4-lane highway where it just leveled everything. We would be sweeping down through there, and one of the little, what we call goops, would come up out of a hole and fire off a clip of ammunition at us. Somehow they would survive. The other time, 2 companies, we've been sweeping an area. Finally they said, oh, to hell with them. We're going to fly back into the fire base. We provided security for the first company to fly out. And our company commander said, okay, watch how they set up, because when they come in to pick us up, they'll set up the same way. So he says, okay, take your position. Well, me and 2 RTOs and a couple of other people in my platoon, we run up there, we get in our position, the choppers come in. Well, since they lobbed that mortar in, they reversed the echelon. The choppers come in, no chopper for us. The choppers take off. Everybody's gone except us. We turned, About that time, they drop a mortar in. I catch a piece in the wrist and a piece in my shin. Another guy, he catches a big piece in his leg. I got two RTOs screaming. The enemy's there. We're out here all by ourselves. About that time, here comes a Huey. I bet he's 6 foot off the ground, just as hard as he can go. He hardly stops before we're throwing the other guy on, and I'm diving in. Everybody's diving in and off we go. I was out on patrol up until 2 days before I left country. I should have been back in the rear a week, and that last patrol, an E6 hit a booby trap and lost both legs. And I was walking point, and he was new. I had a bad feeling, so I had slowed down, and we were headed back, and he got in a hurry, and he said, "Come on, let's go," and he rushed past me, and he made it about maybe 30 yards and hit a booby-trapped RPG. Lost both legs. We decided to go out around through the rice paddies instead of this, and sure enough, they were set up in the area where we were headed. They blew an ambush on us, but it was such a far ambush that it didn't do any good. But I had 2 rifles jam on me, his and mine. And I got back to the fire base, and I told the first sergeant, or the field first, I said, "That's it." I said, "I've got 2 days." He said, "What are you doing here?" And he called in, and they said, "Get him on a chopper. Get him back here." They got me back there because they couldn't have me in country in my ETS. And they got me out of there 1 day before I was supposed to get out of the Army. I was going to take a list to the wall with me. That list had over 30-some names on it. I decided not to because I figured they're gone. That was a healing thing for me. It's been a long, hard road to overcome that, and I hid somewhat behind my camera. It helped me through that, because it was a very, to see that. In fact, all the monuments were somewhat, because you connect. Maybe they weren't your generation, but they were your brothers.
All the stories, all the scars, how we soldiered just as hard, and how the blood we shed was just as red. Just as red. We can't forget, don't forget, it's just as red.
And sitting beside you, he's a quiet man. He's a solemn man. He smiles back when you say hello. He's got a black hat on, tells you where he's been. It's filled with patches and pins from his accomplishments.
And the mail call. I wrote a letter to each of the schools, thanking the students and the teachers for the letters. That meant a lot. Even the pictures that the kindergartners.
I reach a hand to shake his, and he reaches back for mine. He's got a somber look in his eyes from the stories he's kept inside. He says, I don't need a mention, 'cause I only did my job. I say that we would not be here now if you had not done your job. So give me this one moment. It's an honor to shake your hand and say, soldier, thank you.
And I can't tell you how much those letters meant to me, because they were from our kids, our grandkids, friends, sometimes people you don't even think to write to you, you know. So yeah, that was an awesome.
Getting the letters from our families in the airplane, you know, that started because I enjoyed it tremendously.
Tells me no, I really try not to think about it much. I say, I understand. Thank you, sir, for your service and everything you've done. He doesn't think he deserves a mention, that he only did his job. I don't think I'd be here singing this song now if he hadn't done that job. So let's all give him a moment. It's an honor to shake his hand and say, soldier, airman, sailor, and marine, thank you.
I've done things you just won't understand. There's a cost to war and a price you pay, fighting for Uncle Sam. I'm doing all I can, trying to be a helping hand, but it's hard to find a way. I was down to 16 cents left in my pocket, with a laundry list of new skills that nobody wanted. Now there's no telling when this downward spiral will end. I just ride away. But I'm still here, hanging on. I don't ask for recognition for the things that I've done. When you're down to your last dime and your hope is all but gone, yeah, no one's hiring heroes, we're just supposed to carry on. I'm just trying to find my way. I don't need you to shed a tear. Just please remember, I'm still here.
Stateside, there's all these protesters, and then you sat there and you says, why am I here? Because you went there, you thought, well, I'm going to help. And you got back, you didn't get thank you or nothing. I used to wonder why I was home. The friends up there, brothers and that, stayed there, you know, and God left me go back, you know. I don't know why he did that. It felt like I'm done now, waiting all these years and finally having all that come out right in front of you, you know.
When I was flying back from Vietnam, I stopped at the Los Angeles airport, put some money in a bag. And it was those people that are going like that, you know, the Hare Krishna. They got the money and threw it back at me. And I said, well, how come you're throwing it back? And they said, because you're a baby killer. They would not take my money. So I said, okay.
Vietnam vets could not get work. It took me a long time to get a job. We suppressed talking about our service life. Very first time that somebody said, thank you for your service, I don't know what they were talking about.
We came out of the plane, all the protesters were out there, of course. You know, that was our welcoming committee. I was working at the commissary, and I was told there that the young guy that ran the PX services there wouldn't hire a Vietnam vet. And I told him, well, I don't need to be working here anyway. And I re-enlisted. Washington, D.C., when we were coming back, we were walking down the hallway there, and I saw these two young ladies standing there applauding with tears. And that really hit home, that there are a lot of people out there that really appreciate us. I really finally felt welcome. It meant so much to me. And I thank all of you so much for the opportunity. I really, really do.
I can't tell you how it makes your heart feel when a young boy or girl comes up and says, thank you for your service. It was hard when you had friends that you went to high school with who all of a sudden they didn't want to talk to you, didn't want to be around you because you had been in Vietnam and you were a baby killer. And when I went home, I was treated like garbage. All of you that are involved in that and putting it together, God bless you so much, because it means a lot to us.
And then the coming back, the return flights. Oh boy, I tell you, when we walked into the airport, when everybody was standing there, I cried. I really did cry, because I always had waited for something like that. Here these people are waving us home and welcome home. Those two words, welcome home, did it. I've wanted that forever since I was in Vietnam, and you guys gave me that.
So I volunteered, and I was in the front lines, you know, and I gave it all. But then I started hearing these riots in the United States, these kids, you know, burning the flag, and I said, you know what, this is for what? They don't care what we're doing here. Got out of Vietnam, I just threw everything away. I went to California. I didn't want to come home for 2 months. I feel like embarrassed, you know. I gave all I had, and people didn't understand what we went through. We're so scared. We keep everything in ourselves. We don't want to open up, and we have that had it for so many years. And one day, one guy says, you know, go to the VA. Maybe they can help you. The lady asked me, you're married? I said, yeah, I'm married. He says, you know, your wife has suffered a lot, hasn't she? I thought that she was a problem. I was a problem. It affects the family. It affects all of us. I was drinking myself to death. I couldn't find out why. As an 18-year-old kid, you don't know what you're going to do. You know, I was born a Catholic, the 10 Commandments, you're not supposed to kill, all that stuff. Well, you come in the war, you become an animal per se to survive. But coming home, you know, it was a different world. Nobody understood, nobody cared. Coming here and seeing the kids, how they treated you, you know, how they respected you. You could see their eyes that were proud of us, you know. I never expected that from the kids. They know that we fought for them. And, you know, people do love you, people do care for you.
I enlisted cause I wanted to make a difference. But sometimes I wonder if it's me. Am I the one that's different? War can change a man. It's hard to understand. I just take it day by day.
Can you imagine, you know, they were our own people, right? That they was against us.
I came back with a plane load of guys to, we call it pure hell, because nobody liked us. And they called us baby killers. They spit on us. That's the worst memories that we have, that we weren't welcomed, the welcome party that we had at the whole El Paso airport, makes up for a lot of it. It was pure enjoyment. I'll never forget that when we went up to the hill and before we went to the wall, and you folks gave us another treat, playing a welcome home song. It was just tremendous.
Up on the little, I call it the grassy knoll, all the red shirts and all the Guardians came by and thanked us and welcomed us home. It was very, very emotional to me. That really stood out.
My first day back, I was walking through Oakland Airport getting spit on. It wasn't easy. And I didn't understand why, it wasn't my fault. So why are you blaming me for the war? And I went over there because I was told to go over there, and I did the best job that I could do. I didn't expect the people in my country to treat us that way. Well, when I got out of the service, I went to apply for a job. The person doing the interview and said, "Oh, you was in the service. Did you see any action?" I was in Vietnam. And in big red letters, he wrote Vietnam across the application. Never heard from him again. That happened 4 times. On the 5th job I went to, the guy said, "You see any action?" I said, "Nope, I was just on a training base in New Mexico, and that was it." And so I got the job. And then 3 weeks later, I got fired for lying on the application. It was hard adjusting because nobody wanted us here. Couldn't really get any help. I went to the VA and explained everything that I was going through, and they said, "Oh yeah, it's PTSD." And I said, "Okay, cool, what do we do for it?" And they said, "Nothing, just go home, it'll go away." And it didn't. It took Joel several years to talk me into coming. I'd spent a lot of time, most of my life, trying to forget about Vietnam, and I really didn't want to be reminded of it. And it turned out to be sort of closure, cathartic, when you guys took us up on the hill and everybody walked past and said, "Welcome home" and "Thank you." And that was the one thing that, it was a good thing. Like I said, it's been life-changing. Put a lot of things into perspective for me. It's, I don't know what it is that was there for so many years, but it feels like it's gone.
If you served and you served honorably and you were under this American flag, we salute you. Airport, head, present, Honor Flight 17, we salute you. Have a wonderful day. God bless you. God bless America.
The honor flight seems like the theme was welcome home. We were not welcomed home. And 55 years, 57 years late, it was extraordinarily touching. The receptions at the airports, everywhere we went, when we came back to the Memorial Hospital parking lot, the beautiful crowd that was there, you guys took care of everything for us. Everything, even things we didn't ask you for, which was really great. The Guardians are trained well, and I needed a little moral support. I got it, and it really, really worked out really well. I can't believe America is finally recognizing what we did. And
people didn't want us to come home, in a sense, they didn't want to celebrate us. And that's how it's been until right now. I cried when we were going from Cruces to El Paso, and I saw all that support from the law enforcement people, and then the cheering. I said, "What the heck?" And I mean, okay, there wasn't just a group there cheering for us, and then we could proceed to where we were going. I mean, the cheering extended. All those people were way out there. I said, "I want this to end. I can't handle it." Yeah. So I did cry. I teared up. We all talked amongst ourselves. Those guys are angels, you guys. This was a great thing here. I love all you guys because, you saved me from that terrible thing in the back of my mind, Erase that. I'm a happy man.
I landed in Seattle, Washington. So I went to the baseball parks, and they would just flip me off or spit towards me. But I felt safer in Da Nang because I had an M16 and hand grenades and a pistol. Nobody could harm me there. I've been to all kinds of psychiatric hospitals, to no avail. It calms it down, but that wall really made me appreciate what I did. I'm so grateful to you. I think with this visit to the wall, my mind is already clear. I'm already home.
So many have been forgotten. We don't need you to shed a tear. Just please remember, we're still here. Yeah, we're still here.
We feel guilty for the ones we
And
lost.
I think this.
Look at them.
Hello, are you there?
Everybody's got their cross to bear. Be it here, be it there. It's still around us everywhere. We're still fighting the battle.
There weren't enough rifles. So when we had to practice assaulting a hill, they literally gave us sticks to hand it, and we went up the hill, bang, 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 bang.
When I eat chicken or turkey, I only eat the wings because I always thought that would help me fly.
Nobody cares about that war. That's what I've got my brothers for. To help me to remember and forget all the stories, all the scars, how we soldiered just as hard, how the blood we shed was just as red.
You know, Mike Brown came, he and I, oh man, we were around in circles forever about him going, I'm not gonna go. You saw how gruff he is. You know, the guy's a pussycat. He's not gonna like that.
Even though there ain't no rifles in our hands.
I am the youngest, so I understand, individual in the room. And I don't think I have to tell anyone how old I am, because everywhere I go, they say, oh, you that old guy.
All the stories, all the scars, how we soldiered just as hard. How
I'm ready to go right now. The phone rings and then they says, you're up. I'm ready to go. Of course, they're going to have to refit me for another uniform because
we can't forget, don't forget, it's just as red.
I'm proud to be an American. God bless the USA. Thank you.